How can a successful, accomplished woman have the relationship of her dreams with her dream masculine man? I have a guest, an expert. He's a male expert on masculinity, and he's going to talk all about this. Stay tuned. The Secret Formula of Femininity for women who want to live a more feminine, fun, and fabulous life. I'm Dr. Nicole Monteiro, your host on this weekly journey to unlocking your inner radiance, nurturing fulfilling relationships, and becoming the best version of yourself. Welcome back, everybody. I'm your guide on this journey to tapping into your feminine essence, Dr. Nicole. And as you can see, I have a guest today. I love when I have male guests because I think the balance and the perspective is so powerful. And I know you're going to love this conversation. I was just chatting and we were like, wait a minute, we should have been recording this. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Dr. Ray. He is a clinical psychologist, relationship expert. Welcome, Dr. Ray. You know, I always like to start with your story. What is it that got you? You've been doing this for a while. I've been reading like 28 years. What is it that got you into this work, not just with relationships, but just the masculinity and femininity aspect of relationships?
Well, I'm going to start with a beautiful story. Then I'll get to what I see as maybe the boring story or how I got there. I know people are like, well, why you
Your
judge?
story is not boring.
When,
Yes.
when people ever read my bio, I'm like, oh, like it's like this snapshot, you know what I mean, of
Uh-huh.
who this person is. So my parents, they passed away, and my dad was born in 1925, and my mother was born in 1934. And they both had very strong personalities, both Sagittarius. They had fire. My mom was from Okinawa, so you would think maybe a submissive Japanese woman, but not. In fact, in the 1950s, because she saw her husband that she's with as a coward and a mama's boy, and she was living with the in-laws, and it was creating a lot of challenges in a relationship. She couldn't handle it anymore, and they did have a child together. And according to the culture, the boy stays with the father. So she walked away from this marriage and was ostracized. And this is the 50s. Women didn't do this. So her son ended up calling her by her first name. And there's a longer story around this. But my mother already was very strong, kind of a Renaissance type of woman. And she met my father during the Vietnam War when he was stationed in Okinawa. And they were married until my mother passed away. That was for 54 years. And one thing that both my parents shared throughout their relationship was the passion for each other, even if, say, that they didn't always get along. There was always that polarity, and there wasn't really a power struggle. And no matter how much my mother, say, aged, no matter how much my mother pushed back, even if my father got frustrated by her strong feminine essence, meaning my mom knew how to dance in a dark feminine also before we even created that terminology. There was always that fire. And I always remember, I even wrote about it in a book, that where my mother, when she would go visit friends, part of her tradition or culture was to always bring a gift. And so we had a abundant lemon tree. And so my mother was out there dressed up with makeup on, and she's pulling lemons from the tree. And my father hobbled out there with his cane, and he's already at this time in his 80s, and he pulls out his camera and he's taking pictures of my mother as if she were modeling. And of course, my mother felt feminine. She felt seen. And my father was taking pictures of her as if this is still my hot wife and, her late 70s or, whatever. And so a big part of my work came from just seeing how things worked out with my parents. And I've seen other couples, when they get past the ego and the power struggles, that there can be that flow, there can be that passion in that dance. And so that is a big part of what kind of helped me kind of understand this and get into the work of understanding polarity, and not contrived polarity, but true polarity for me is when a woman feels authentic, when she feels like she can be herself, and she can speak up no matter what, and she can lean into conflict, which also means being embodied in her masculinity and not being afraid and trusting that safety is within, then she, in a way, can lean in and she can co-create. And therefore, a man who is to show up to be, say, equivalent to her, obviously would have to be a strong masculine man and who could be the parts of her that she doesn't want to be, or where
Mm-hmm.
he just seems to fit in because he enjoys that space. Such as my partner is very feminine, but she's also a coach. And when she shares, of course, she has the idea that I can hold this big container of safety and she can share and I don't have to fix it. And I'm not going to have a reaction to it. If I have a reaction to it, I take still personal responsibility for what's coming up in me. But she just knows that she can say anything and be herself and be fully seen.
Yes. Yes.
So that's a big part. I
Wow.
teach women to lean into that. But
Mm-hmm.
until they develop that trust within themselves, until they
Mm-hmm.
develop a certain level of masculinity, and I know this doesn't make sense because for many women, they'll connect masculinity to their doing or wearing the pants
Mm-hmm.
or aspects of themselves that turn off men. However, it's not that at all. It's the masculinity knowing that you can say no without feeling guilty. It's the masculinity knowing that you have
Boundaries.
boundaries.
Yes.
It is where you can assert yourself, where it's like you're not dependent on the man to create the trust. Now, I understand you would like to have a trustable man. And when I say trustable, I'm not even talking about like a man who doesn't cheat. I'm talking about where he can show up, to where he can hold that space for you, to, to where he can say,
All
be
right,
that.
Dr. Ray, I got it. You are going so deep. And you know,
Yes.
I love to break things down for my audience because no, and then we're psychologists, so we speak that language. You said
Uh-huh.
so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
One, first of all, I love it. First of all, the personal connection to what you observed. So when you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about polarity, what I hear is like you saw it in action and
Mm-hmm.
you saw love and adoration and respect all wrapped in one. And
Mm-hmm.
then you seem to be able to live that out in your relationship. Like you're not just telling women, hey, be strong and be this and that. Like you accept that in your partner. And so
Mm-hmm.
I want us to get into the whole like performative femininity
Mm-hmm.
versus like false sense of masculinity and like how to get to that deeper authentic self for a woman. And I think women are going to love to hear this from you as a man.
Mm-hmm.
Not just as a man, but like I think there's value to it, right?
For me, relationship is everything. So even though I've worked deeper with people with the trauma, I've done the shadow work, and I've
Uh-huh.
worked with over 6,000 clients, no matter what the issue is, it's how the person relates to him or herself. We have these either positive thoughts or these negative self deprecating thoughts.
Mhm.
So with every client, when they would bring an issue to me, it would always be with how they perceive themselves in work or relationship or self-care or spirituality. And so that is why I chose the path of working with people in their relationships, in their
Mhm.
life, because it's everything. It always comes back to the self. And that's my short answer.
Yes, no, I love it. I love it. I think, you know, most people who go into our field, we have that similar kind
Mhm.
of journey where we realize it's like you're sitting with a Zen master and he's like, it's about you, right? You realize it's really that person. But people need to know about you. You're a best-selling author, Dr. Ray, Doktor. Am I saying it correctly? We
You are?
chatted about that. Is a best-selling author whose book was published by the team behind Chicken Soup for the Soul series. I loved that series. With a doctorate in clinical psychology and over 28 years of experience as a life and relationship coach, Dr. Ray has shared stages with some of the most influential voices in personal development, including Marianne Williamson, Bruce Lipton, John Gray, and Eckhart Tolle. His expertise has been featured in the E Channel, HBO, uh, KCAL 9 LA, as well as Psychology Today, Men's Health, and the Los Angeles Times. So, again, thank you so much. Let's get right back into it. So, just to put it short or bluntly, what do men want in relationships? Like ultimately, women want to know that. I saw here you shared the stage with John Gray. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Yeah, like we don't understand each other. So, from a male's perspective and an expert perspective, what do men want in a relationship with a woman?
It's actually what type of man you want to attract. So I'll break it down. If
Okay.
you have a underdeveloped man, meaning that he hasn't really gone beyond his primal desires, and let's just say he might be a little bit narcissistic, or being with women kind of gives him a sense of self, then of course that type of man isn't grown up, and of course he still probably just wants sex or you to make him feel good, you know. Then you get maybe a man who's a little bit evolved beyond that,
Mm-hmm.
and he might want companionship. Might want children. It might not be so much about the growth of the woman. It's more what can we create together so I can leave
Mm,
a legacy to where where there's more boundaries versus in the say the first stage man. You know, he's not dependable. He's not very grounded. In fact, he might have addictions and everything else. The
mm-hmm.
second stage man might be where he's a little bit more contained and speaks appropriately and so forth, but he's has a bigger picture, a bigger plan. He might be more grounded. And so his needs might be, again, how you serve his purpose, but he has a bigger picture. He might be considered more safe. Then you have a third stage man, and that might be a man where he also has a plan, but he wants to love your dark and light. He wants to
Mm,
experience your expression. He cares what you have to say and how you evolve with him. He wants to rediscover you every day. So when you're able to be vulnerable and when you're able to
mm,
smile and when you're able to have your heart open by maybe something he had done, then that lights him up and he wants to do that for you again.
mm-hmm.
That type of man, meaning the third stage, is where he recognizes that there's going to be off days as well, but he's not dependent on you to keep him on because he understands that while you are his most important, say, feminine source to his heart, he recognizes you're still human and you're
Mm-hmm.
still growing and you still have shit to do. You still have problems. And you might be a single mother where, he recognizes that as well. He's not needy. He's not dependent. He wants to meet you as an equal, but also that you both are maybe doing some type of personal growth together
Mm-hmm.
and you're growing together. So those are three types of different men.
Ooh, you
And
hear that,
so
ladies? Uh-huh.
it's very important to recognize then if women are hearing this going, wow, how do you
Yeah,
discover that? It's
yeah.
by asking certain questions. It's also by recognizing, are we okay with leaning into conflict by asking these questions, not as an interrogation, but
Mm-hmm.
as to get to know a person? Because the second stage man, typically that type of conversation is going to be, where did you go to school? How long have you been divorced? What do you think about having kids? Where you see yourself in the future. And sure, it's great to understand if that man has a map, but truly, you know, the questions I ask are, what are you like when you are in your shit?
Mm.
How do I know when you are in your shit? And how can I support you when you're in your shit? Because
So
there's always,
very personal.
yeah, it's because the beginning is always a honeymoon period.
Yeah.
And so most relationships are okay the first 3 to 6 months because there's hot sex. It's new and our shadows don't come out. But typically, whether it's in relationships with a man or at your work or with your friends, that our stuff can come up. And whoever you're with most often will mirror where you need to grow. And so ideally, you want to make sure if you're going to meet a man that number one, you have good communication. And good communication is transparent and authentic communication. Number two is being able to create a connection, that connection, very important. And then it's chemistry, because you can have a guy who you talk to well and you can feel connected to this person, but you have a lot of male friends who are that way also that you don't
Mm.
have chemistry with. So if you do want to have a romantic relationship, you hope to have those three C's. Very important. And when I say authentic and raw, and I know women are going to cringe when they hear this, because you might think, I wouldn't even, I couldn't dare to say that to a man. It's where, just imagine you're with this person who you love, you're attracted to, and he's having trouble at work, and you see him drinking more. You see him sitting on the couch and like checking out. You see him actually gaming. Well, sure, you can keep putting in your head, well, he's going through something. Almost like talking
The
about what
ultra
he's doing.
understanding. Uh-huh.
Like, oh, he'll find his way. But he's doing it for 2 months, and it's impacting you. It's
Yeah.
impacting your heart. And so, are you going to sit there and just, because what's the purpose of the relationship if you can't help each other grow? So
Hmm.
you're not going to go to him and say, you need to get off the couch, you lazy whatever. It's and just say his name is Hank. It'd be, Hank. That's such a redneck name, Hank. I don't know why I brought that.
That was the first name that came to you. Well, I
I
thought you were
cannot
going to
believe.
say Bob. But let's say Hank is sitting there gaming and, he's just not
Is
even
that,
a space.
by the way, is that the name of in a Dixie Chicks song where they bury Hank? There's a song where
Oh,
they put him in the back of like he was like an abuser. I might have been Hank.
wow.
I don't know. Maybe that's why I thought of that. So,
Wow. The dark feminine, huh? Like she was not going to take it. But like
so
what you're saying is you can't, because I remember my husband told me, like, I don't want a yes man because that's not good for you and it's not good for me. Like you said, that ultra empathetic understanding where you're holding in things that could be beneficial to your partner as well as to yourself.
yeah. Well, it might be conversations such as you sit down with them and you say,
Mm-hmm.
I love how you look at me when we have dinner, and I I just recognize you're a great worker. I've just noticed that, you seem to be kind of drinking a little bit more or just maybe not present. Is there something going on at work? See, I'm not accusing
Mm-hmm.
Hank for anything, but I'm also saying how he's doing something great. I'm still connected to him and that I feel it in my heart. And then Hank might say that, there's been a lot of challenges at work. He doesn't
Mm-hmm.
know if he's going to be demoted or whatever. And the partner might say that, just say, I can only imagine how that feels. How can I
Yeah.
help? That's
Mm-hmm.
it. Just
Mm-hmm.
really not taking it personally. So, even with my girlfriend, this happened, and even she doesn't have this practice because she didn't witness it growing up, even though she's a coach and she's still practicing it. And is where she didn't want to get in the way of me giving a teaching moment to my son. And she was connected to him. She was like talking to him,
Uh-huh.
and his shoes were like drenched, one shoe. And I said, "What happened to your shoe? Because there's no way that it would be dry the next morning for school." And he said, "Oh, I splashed some water on it." I said, "Dude, there's no way you splashed water on this." And while he's learning how to be accountable more and more in
Yeah.
that moment, and he wasn't, I said, "Dude," and I just interrupted her conversation. And I said, "You had to step in a puddle or something." He says, "Yes, I stepped in a puddle." I said, "Why didn't you say that the first time? You're not getting in trouble. By
Mm-hmm.
owning it will allow me to help you dry your shoe. What is that?" And I was kind of intense because it's something that is my shadow, where when my son or people are not accountable, I still
It
somewhat
brings out that like,
get
yeah.
owning, not getting in trouble. But in that moment, after the fact, my girlfriend said, when you said that, while I understand that was important, she said, but it really disconnected the flow between Max and I. And I just felt as though you could have held back a little bit, or maybe find another time, or been softer. And I said, well, thank you for telling me that. And that's how
Mm-hmm.
you show up better than I can. I said, but just know, without telling me I'm saying it wrong, I go, you can also interject to guide me. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you're the heart of the family.
Yeah.
Sometimes so much into
That
uh,
balance, right?
the boundaries
Mm-hmm.
and trying to teach my son, I need you to, and she was still, because she had mostly been with men who would get defensive, even with the response.
Mm.
But she's learning that I don't get defensive. I'm more and more saying more of that,
Yeah.
because even though my parents say, had a lot of good qualities, my father often was the thermometer there. Like he was, the way his moods would dominate the house. And I didn't
Mm-hmm.
like it, especially during Christmas time. And my mother, while she was buying gifts and in her joy and trying to, be loving, and that was maybe her love language also, my father was grumpy.
Mm.
He was in three major wars. So he
Mm-hmm.
spent a lot of Christmases with men he was holding space for who were crying and missing their family. And so he would say things to my mother like, why are you buying stuff? You don't need to do this, like, and
Mm.
kind of
Yeah,
squashing
yeah.
joy in the house. And while she wasn't doing anything wrong, in fact, she could have brought more light into his life that he missed.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and that's, I would say, being a woman, being in her masculine and feminine, because her nurturing energy, her joy, even her trust in herself and assertiveness, which would be a more masculine quality,
Uh-huh.
could have also impacted his heart to bring him out of his head and back to what really mattered
Yeah,
in
yeah.
December.
Well,
And
it
that's such,
sounds so before we started recording, you brought up this term integrated. And I think that's so important because I think as we know with trauma, we're very fragmented, like we get into one part or piece or the other. So when you
mhm,
talk about this masculine and feminine together, it's very integrated. But what I heard you say in that story is that we heal in our relationships. Like
mhm.
the way you and your girlfriend have this back and forth, and you're like, no, more of that. And she's like, honey, like it's because I think sometimes people feel like we have to come as these perfect beings and have it
Mhm.
all figured out. But what you're saying is the healing is in the relationship. That's how, like, you would never know certain things about yourself if it weren't for these things that come up in relationships.
Absolutely. And a partner who can communicate it, because we don't find the perfect relationship. We create it. We do not
Mm.
find the perfect
Say that
relationship.
again. I think that
We
needs to be.
create it. And it is an
Yes.
ongoing collaboration
Uh huh.
by relating with each other. It's not like you find some perfect relationship and you sit on that big ship. You're like, it's going to be easy. It's going to be perfect. No, you're going to have to continue to relate because, say the man or the masculine character in a relationship might be heading right toward an iceberg.
Mm.
And you hope the feeler in the relationship or someone who's intuitive or just she or he can trust her heart and go, hey, I think you might want to change the course.
Like, listen up. I have your best interests and
Yeah,
mine at heart. Yeah.
such a great collaboration. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, given that though, because I've heard some women feel confused. Like, how do you know the difference between, hey, this is a journey and hey, this is a red flag? Like, if we're saying we not to expect perfection, how do even those three types of stages of men you talked about, how do
Mhm.
women navigate knowing, okay, wait a minute, this is a no-go versus not being so quick to cut people off?
Well, there's this list of 10 flags that I created,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, I will try to share some of them. Okay. So, for example, and these are like, for example, if a woman were to meet a man, and I would hope this would be a red flag, and he were to say, well, occasionally I do cocaine on a first date, I would hope that that would be a red flag, you know?
Yeah.
Or if a man showed up on a date and said, I've been married 5 times, and the woman asks, well, what happened? And man says, they were just all bitches.
Mm.
The man is not taking accountability and hasn't grown from any of that. So there's certain things that you would want to look for. And I'll name some of them, such as if the man is just miserable, like really miserable at his
Yeah.
job and what's going on, do you think he's going to all of a sudden be happy and have something to contribute in a relationship that is happy? No. Eventually, how you make him feel is going to wear off because he's still sitting with himself. You know, another one is how how much does he keep his commitments? If he talks about flaking on people,
Mm-hmm.
he's going to flake on you.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
not going to be able to commit to the relationship. There's how much is he in integrity? Listen to how he talks about people and things. If that is not there, then it's not going to be in a relationship, and more likely he's also not going to take personal accountability. So these 10 red flags that I shared with women are to see characteristics about them. But here's the big one. It's not necessarily a red flag. It's where women will do this wishful thinking. I see his potential he's still a really nice guy. But however, your experiences with him is still coddling him. Your experiences with him is you still leading in a masculine. That doesn't feel good, even though he's a nice guy. In fact, what I'm describing is maybe a parent and child relationship. The
Motherly.
whole,
Yes.
I know Junior has this potential, but if you meet this man and he's 30 years old and up, and he's had the same story, are you going to wait for his potential forever? Or are you going to recognize that you're worthy right now and you want to find a match to who you are right now? Like dating is not necessarily a dress rehearsal. It's like
Yeah.
where, sure, you can give a man a second chance on a second date. But the thing is that you have to look at the man's action. Look at a man's actions over your
Over his
feelings.
words. Over, okay, and your feelings. Yes.
Yes. Look at his actions over his words, over your feelings. Because what if he's poetic? I'm just dealing with this in a really poetic way. But I haven't worked in a while. I was in India on this sabbatical and for 2 years, I'm just finding myself.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I mean, so if he's still trying to find himself, do you want him to find himself and the relationship with you, meaning all of a sudden he discovers that he doesn't like you because he's going to change to someone else? I would imagine you want a man who's more crystallized with this knowingness and with
Sense
a
of
stronger sense
self.
of self and identity.
Yeah. Well, so why are women, I've seen this a lot, high achieving, successful women, which are some of the women that you work with,
Mhm.
often attract men that are that don't have that crystallized sense of self. And I have my theory about it, what's going on. But like, first of all, have you seen that a lot?
All the time.
And what's your understanding of why that is? These powerhouses, as you said before we recorded, and forward facing and successful and ambitious, and we see it time and time again that they are choosing almost the opposite of that.
It's whether people want to believe this or not, it's polarity. And so if you are more in the masculine, and I'm going to give a description such as you're out there hunting with a spear and you're looking for a masculine man and he's out there hunting with a spear also, he's going to experience you as more like a friend,
Uh-huh.
as
Like, hey,
it's not,
bud, let's go.
yes,
Hey,
yeah, like
Hank, hey, bud, let's
not
go.
just high five each other.
Uh-huh.
So um, it is that when a woman typically, this is a generalization. I believe that most women at the core are feminine.
Yes.
Okay. At the core, they're feminine. However, they have been let down not only by men that they've dated, but by their fathers, by patriarchy, by men in powerful positions, and that there's this major trust with men, and there should be, at some level. But it's recognizing that if you let go of your trust issues and you soften your heart and you get into a space where not only could you can support yourself, you're open to the idea that a man can support certain needs, then you have more of a chance to attract a man who can fit in that area. Because what I've noticed, it's more this. And you said, have I seen this? I've seen it over 1,000 times. I started doing it more 20 years ago, and I saw more and more. Yes, men are becoming more feminine for many different reasons. But I also know women are leaning into that space to compensate. Therefore, there's no space for a masculine man to fit. And it's with the communication, it's with the lack of vulnerability, And then what I get is a lot of pushback. I can even have, there could be
Me
women right now
too.
saying, you
Yes.
want me to be dingy? You want me just to be
Yes.
like this hot mess?
Or
Well,
why do I have to do all of this work to leave space for his masculinity? He should be masculine enough. These are things that I've heard. Mm-hmm.
oh, absolutely. Well, so first up, what's interesting, the hot mess in the, say, the orphan girl or the damsel in distress, well, they always have guys, no matter how much erect they
Yep.
are, because they offer some type of polarity or exchange. And that exchange could be this. It's not like they typically get like uh, high quality men, like a guy who wants them to grow and have their own business. They don't attract the type of guys who are totally secure. In fact, that's maybe one of the reasons why they date someone who seems to be inferior. Like for me, if they're what if the only thing I find attractive to the hot mess or a woman like that is that they're able to receive. That's it. Just be able to receive, and it's
Mm-hmm.
nice. However, if that type of woman were continue to say, "I need help, I need help, I need help," I would say you need to Google it. You need to
Mm.
work on
You
yourself.
start to kind of, it repels you a bit. It's,
Yeah, yeah. You need to take
yeah,
personal
it's one
responsibility.
dimensional. Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I'll give you an example with my girlfriend Nicole, and she sometimes
Oh,
hears
her
these.
name's Nicole. Wow.
Yeah,
She
she
must be amazing. Name
so
my name mate.
okay, so she hears some of these podcasts, and she says
Mm-hmm.
it's funny to hear you talk about me, and I think it's funny. So her mother was an actual nun before she came along, a retired nun, and she married a man, Nicole's father, who was in a closet. He was gay.
Oh,
And she didn't
wow.
even know he was gay until I think 3 months left of his life. He died of
Mm-hmm.
AIDS. So you want to talk
Mm.
about major issues with the masculine, with men, and so forth. And her mother moved into the masculine, like
Mm-hmm.
many women do. Like, I got to take care of these kids. He's all over the place. He's a wreck. In fact, he's going to die. And so a lot of what Nicole has modeled is what her mother modeled. And so our power struggles have been with whether or not she knows I'll show up, even
Mm-hmm.
though I have a
Trust.
good, consistent track record. And so I'll give you an example. When we first met, we were at this big parade, and my kid, so, when he's gotten better at it, but when he's with a lot of people, sometimes he gets a little afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And I happened to leave, and I was meeting them back there. I don't know how, but I got mixed up, and I couldn't find them. And it's the crowd. It started getting more crowded, and I had this anxiety. And then for whatever reason, it wasn't communicated well where she was. But I finally found her, and I raised my voice, and it wasn't about her;
That
it was
was
about my son.
the anxiety.
She
Yeah.
looked at me. She says, I do not appreciate how you're talking to me right now. He is fine right now. I did not do anything wrong. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to take a walk. And she walked away. Okay. In that, my heart opened up. It put me in check. And when she came back, I hugged her and I said, I'm sorry. I said, I was in my shit. I was worried about my son. You're the first person I've allowed to
Oh,
to
to be
basically
close to
to
like
take
to
control of
okay.
the
Uh-huh.
situation of my son ever in a crowd.
Yeah.
And I go, I have to work through that of letting go of that. And she said, I didn't know if you would still be here after I raised my voice. I said, you had all the right to raise your voice and and let me know your boundaries. And I said, honestly, it was a kind of a turn on. It was where I saw your spine.
Yeah.
And that would be an example. And she didn't yell like you're a piece of shit. She was just like in that, hey, how dare you raise your voice
It was
to,
authentic too. That
oh,
I
yeah,
think people need to hear that is authenticity because I think sometimes we perform authenticity.
yeah,
That was genuine authenticity. How long
yes,
have you all been together?
three
If you
years, 3.5 years.
Yeah.
So it was a raw moment. And so that went better than this. 2 weeks ago, we went to dinner.
So
God.
listen, so that means it's an ongoing process, ladies,
Oh,
right? Because
yeah.
it's not like you're saying, oh, that was so long ago and
Well,
it's all.
I recommended you the book before you got on this call called, it's from Kelly Brogan.
Uh-huh.
It is
The
so good.
feminine, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I am, I want to recommend my book also, but
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about this other book.
Uh,
She has taken parts of the book, and I mean, Nicole, and she's taken notes and she's sharing the feedback with me. And I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly what I'm talking about, because I'm not a female. And so having a woman speak it who is a ass kicker who talks about being performative, Nicole's really identifying with this woman. And so the greatest gift that you can give to a masculine man is your appreciation in your body, the ahs, thank you, that good feeling. I know some women do this and a man doesn't get that, but that man's not masculine,
mm,
or that man is not in his heart. He still needs to develop. But men who are grounded, we get turned on. And her and I were working with a relationship coach. I know everyone thought we were perfect, but we're working relationship coach.
so
And
important. Coaches need coaches, relation. Like, no, it's so true.
I,
Like, you always need someone outside of yourself.
so
Uh-huh.
he kept trying to describe in his best ability what Ray likes. Like when don't you notice that he showed up when you did that? He said, men, healthy men will keep showing up to do more and more and more and more and more when they feel that appreciation, because the healthy men want to create containers for beauty to shine. Healthy men want the containers for women and children to be able to play, and not because they're helpless, not because they can't do it themselves. It's just an energetic exchange. And so it excites me. So we go out to dinner, and I forgot what had happened, but we went to a space where we weren't arguing, but she started feeling defeated. And instead of like, and I wanted to say something to her, which would have floored her in a positive way. Instead, she went to more resistance and thought I was going to say something critical, like again, a projection.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I wanted to do nothing but kind of read a Hallmark card for my soul to let her know in this moment when she was crumbling how beautiful she was. Instead of that, she argued for a limitation. She says, don't worry, I'll pay for this meal.
Mm.
And that pissed me off
Mm-hmm.
because it
Power
was,
struggle. Uh-huh.
yeah, I said, and she was saying it as a joke, but she was going into her head almost like saying, I know you put the effort into taking me here, and I know this meal is expensive. So for me being myself, for me being my feminine, I'm going to pay the bill so we're even, or you don't feel bad. It made me so angry, because when she was in her vulnerable place, and not that a woman has to be crying for me
Mm-hmm.
to feel good, she kind of pushed me away. And
Yeah.
I said, Nicole, I go, this is what was supposed to happen, and us going out. It wasn't like we were supposed to go to dinner and like it was going to be totally perfect like you see in the movies.
Mm. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
go, and so the power struggle is her not wanting to appear to be weak,
Yes.
to even inconveniencing me because I'm a busy man. But the thing is, I purposely chose her as my partner because of her vulnerability,
Yeah.
because I can help. And I don't help her just with that. I'm she has a son who I'm really involved with the co-parenting. I'm really good with
Are
boys.
you all sons similar in age, or like who's
Yes.
old? Okay.
Yeah. So I'm good with working with parents and really good with the boys. And so I do share things that is helping her relate to her son better and where she's seen more progress. So I'm in every part of her life, even her coaching, where uh, I'm good with coaching. I know, a little bit about copy and other things like that. And so a lot of her conversations where I do share a lot of information because I love her, but I never see it as, uh, I don't get reciprocity, or where like because I'm coaching her, helping her a little bit with her business or website, that I should get some money.
Mm-hmm.
Her being happy, her just feeling me, her knowing I'm there is it. It's everything. And it's
Yeah.
enough.
So for the high achieving, successful woman, this some of this is going to be a little bit difficult, right? Because
Mm,
she wants that stage three man that you talked about.
yes.
She ultimately, I also believe women, it's our nature to lean into our feminine. But because of all of the different things, we put up a wall and we have to defend ourselves, we feel like. What is the first thing that a woman needs to do to get a little more to make that mindset shift, to allow herself to do some of that vulnerability, that softness, that receptivity?
It would be doing dancing. It would be being
Mm.
led by a woman who really embodies it. It would be, I used to do this stuff. I used to be in workshops with women. I'm the only man there. I would have women put their hands over their heart, and I'd be playing kind of trance type of music, and I would have them move around their body, shake their hips a little bit, not twerking. I would have them
Yeah, it's a
move.
different energy though. Like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it would be where, what would it be like for someone to support you? If fear comes up, just be aware of it, because it's part of your psyche now, and it's been there. Who would you become if you let go of this identity that you have to be strong? Just some of those questions while they're dancing, a lot of them will start to cry. So it's first like recognizing with themselves, what does it feel like to be supported? And it'd
Yeah.
be, I'm afraid I'm going to be let down again. Well, until they let go of that belief, they'll never find that masculine man.
Yeah.
They'll never attract that support because they don't believe it. You have to be the receptacle of that which you want to attract. Bottom line. And so it's it's putting their hands by their hips, and it's moving around and drawing energy to their pelvic
I love how
area.
you're demonstrating it
Yeah,
too. For
yeah,
those who are listening, you've got to come watch the video because it's an energy, like it really
yeah.
is. Yeah.
And it's right now I'm moving my hips, and it'd be, what do I hang on to identify with in my hips, my body, my vagina? Like, what parts of me is afraid to dance openly and free? What parts of me closes up? What part of me freezes? Where do I feel maybe possibly violated in this area? Where why is it that I have a guard still up to protect this part of my body? What parts of my body still feels condemned or shamed or ugly by what was said about it? And even those questions, and move into that space and pull out a journal and start writing about it. Because everything you write about is not going to be true. It's just going to be a belief that you have just by moving in your body and connecting to that cellular memory in your body. And those are ways to start activating that.
Yeah. So femininity, and I believe this is an embodied energy. It's not theoretical. It's not something you can just say or just read about. Like it has to be experienced and
It's embodied
embodied.
practice. Yes, an embodied practice. Absolutely. In fact, Nicole and I saw her therapist for the first time, just so I was in on her session. And I hope she doesn't see this podcast, but her therapist, but it was all in the head. It was all traditional. It was like more, and I can see she was not in her feminine, and nothing. I'm sure she helps people out. But when it comes to being your feminine, you've got to do somatic work.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to work with someone who has a connection to spirituality, to God, to nature. And it might be someone who's not even a therapist. It might be where someone takes you into nature and has you hug a tree, and you breathe and you connect to the tree as if it is you, and you feel the roots root you down into who you are and you're becoming and all that you are to be. I mean, there's different ways to really connect to this. There's
Yeah.
different permission slips.
Let me ask you, do you also coach men on that higher level masculinity, or and like cuz men are often the way women can be wounded in their femininity, men can be as well, or have you found that you just prefer working with women, or do you
I
do
prefer
both?
working with people who are eager and willing to do the work. And when it's come to men, I've seen less men eager to do the work. I see them being more pleasure driven, and they want the quick steps rather than go through the process, the feminine. And
Yeah.
therefore, I do sometimes have men who show up are pretty damn amazing. But again, if they're not in their heart, what they want is the outcome and result versus to go through the process. So it could take a really long time, or they're more interested in, say, doing plant medicine because then they can completely annihilate their consciousness. They just jump right into like Mother Divine. They purge whatever, and there's nothing that stops them from feeling. In fact, I had a client yesterday where I did a male client sound bowl with, and I was able to crack him open with just the vibrations of the sound, uh, with a sound bath. But he too was like, do you know anybody here in the area that does ayahuasca? And I said, because this guy's can be very controlling, very much in his head, very methodical. And for some men, it's harder to go there in their hearts. And so that's why doing plant medicine might be easier. But what ends up happening is that how do you integrate that into every day? To how do you recognize that the medicine isn't just with, say, doing ayahuasca? It is what happened to you in that, what softened in you, and can you become that every day? How's that going to be translated in your body when you're with your
Outside of this
partner?
grand experience. Yeah. And for
Yeah.
people who don't know, it's like people use kind of, plant medicine, psychedelics, or whatever to have an experience that takes them to another level. But I think to your point, it's more about the consistent small things that you're able to shift versus
Yes.
like this one, big
Yeah.
thing. Yeah. Yeah.
So I went on
So
a tangent with it. I live in an area where
mm,
a lot of the
is
men
it
are
common?
feminine. Oh my
Oh.
God. This is all they do here. It's all they do here.
Well, tell us because I think a lot of my female listeners and followers will they tell me they're like there's the men are feminine. Like they say there's a gap, right? Like yes, we need to work on being less masculine, but where are the masculine men? So what's going on? Why are the men you kind of alluded to it earlier.
Well, I'll tell
Why are men
you
more
my
feminine?
theories. There's many. Okay. So
Mhm.
one is that we don't have healthy male leaders. So now what we have is influencers or people in political positions who act like assholes. So where we don't have a lot of strong male figures out there. That's one.
Mhm.
And they still can make money and they can still get the woman like Andrew
Yeah.
Tate, the immature
Yeah.
man. Okay.
Oh gosh,
He's
yes.
he's such a jerk to women. Okay. That's not a man. Okay. So you have that. Okay. Number two, I'm gonna give you several reasons. You have boys who are gaming, or their interactions to develop in themselves is through gaming versus their rites of passage of going up to the woman and or the girl and going, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you," and the girl says no, to experience real rejection rather
Mhm.
than get it through an emoji. So we don't have
Mm.
real life experiences where I think every boy should be thrown out into the jungle somewhere and get the shit scared out of them, and to where they have to take their
Master
walkabout,
their master
like in Australia.
themselves.
They need that, and we've stripped that away from a lot of boys and women, boys and girls. Sorry,
Yeah.
and so we don't have that. Number three, we have millennials who are older who now have children who also grew up with the culture that created positive psychology and positive parenting where you never say no. So there's no boundaries. Boundaries is the masculine in a man or woman. So there's no guidance or map or direction. So a lot of boys are growing up without that energetic map or connection of how to be. As an example, when I grew up, my role model was Harrison Ford because
Mm.
he was smart, he was sexy and got the woman, he was adventurous, he was a little bit rebellious. I had role models like that I would look towards to be like that type of man.
Mm.
There's certain men, you'll notice my girlfriend knows all the men I like. They're all masculine, they're all
Uh-huh.
good fathers, they all show up and are respectful to their women or their daughters. It's just this kind of they just have that.
The
George
full
Foreman
package.
is
Yeah.
was one of my mentors and
Mm.
heroes as
Yeah.
an example. Such a good man,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So there's still us Gen Xers who exist who have that, but we had that role model. Right now, we don't have that.
Mm.
It's just very loose. And back to the positive parenting movement is that, you know, you have to fail. You have to experience rejection. You have to hear no to develop your character. And we're seeing what's happening with the Gen Zs and the Alphas, where they are the most insecure generations ever, and yet they have it so much easier, compared to where we were.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need the development. And so now you have also men who now 20, 30 years of that making babies where they're very feminized. There's none of that direction. And here's the other part. I do speak up. And what happens are these two things sometimes. I get those men ripping on me, say in the back of Facebook, almost like a child. And I'm shocked. I'm like, this sounds like something you would hear from
From
a
a
man,
tantrum, like,
teenager.
yeah.
But they'll find women who support them anyway. I've had women go, you know, you should be softer with him, to like the women who moved into the masculine, where they'll look at me like I'm toxic masculine, or that like I'm too much for these boys. And it would be equivalent to me saying to a woman that I will teach you how to teach your daughter what it's like to go through menstruation. Oh
Mm-hmm.
my God. I would be told that I'm mansplaining. I'd be ripped apart. Okay. I have masculine women
Women's
jump
planning.
in my
Uh-huh.
conversations when I'm trying to guide men. So it's an area where I've pulled out of a little bit, where
Yeah.
because I'm like, I get hit by the little boys and I get hit by the mothers. I used to,
Whoa, this
yes,
is deep. Wait, when did you? Because I'm just picturing it. It's like so much, so many wounded energies. So
yeah,
you can't, the mothers, quote unquote, metaphorical mothers are protecting the immature boys.
absolutely. Where I live, I don't, I'm moving out of here. I
You
live in
can't take it, huh?
Ashland. I live in Ashland, Oregon, and
Oh,
I'll give
okay,
you,
I'm familiar. Uh-huh.
yeah, very feminine. And I was at this. I remember trying to set up a play date with a woman, and she told me ahead of time that her kid was, very a physical kid. That's how she labeled it. We get to this pool, and he is just 6 months younger than my son. While my son is in the pool, grabbing him, almost pulling him under, and I said, "Will you please let go of him?" And he would not listen to my son. He would not listen to the mother. Like they just, I mean, it's a complete permissive parenting, but
Yeah.
in being softer, and they're just saying he's physical. I'm like, he has poor boundaries,
Yeah.
really poor boundaries.
No
And then,
control, self
and then his
control.
mother's telling him to get out of the pool, and he's splashing water in her face disrespectfully. And I'm like, and I shared, Nicole's there, and she's like, "Oh my God, like he's really out of control." And I'm like, it was so bad. She ended up taking him away. Like he didn't learn the lesson or
Mm-hmm.
anything. And I shared with Nicole, I said, just know imagine what's going to happen when he can knock her over. Imagine what's going to happen when he is 14 or 15 years old and he could just do whatever he wants, because physically he can push her down.
But then
And
emotionally, when he gets rejected by a woman,
oh,
how is he going to
yeah,
react?
yep, yeah. And you see it with these immature young adults where they've had parents like this. They can't handle life.
Yeah.
And so it's and you know this too, like you'll see women, single mothers who have several children, and where they even George Foreman had a mother like that, whether it was religious or they had firm boundaries. No matter how big that boy got, he respected his mother. He respected his mother.
Yeah.
He would he would crumble if his mother was upset at him. And here now the boy is like 6'4", and the mom's only like 5'2".
Mm-hmm.
Still deep love and respect for the feminine, because he was taught to respect his mother, therefore hold a container for women in general and children as well.
Yeah. That's why a
It,
lot of women do say one of the qualities they look for in a man is like a man who has a good relationship with his mother. They know
Yeah.
instinctively that
That's the other red flag. If you meet a man, that was it. If
mm-hmm.
you meet a man who he doesn't have to have a great relationship with his mother, but if he says my mother was a bitch, she was a narcissist, oh, I don't want to talk to her, versus my mother, I take her in small doses. I
Mm-hmm.
love my mother for where she's at, but she's has mental illness. That's
Yeah.
healthy. That's fine.
Yeah.
But a man who talks about his mother as if he's still a wounded teenager, you're going to become his mother in a relationship.
Yeah.
Run.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, Dr. Ray, I love how we got into the real. Because this is no, and it's not even like a racial thing, because I talk a lot to Black women, but I
Mhm,
talk to so many women, and it's the same kind of trend.
mhm,
Like there's this lack of maybe having observed polarity, healthy polarity, and the distrust and all this, and having to be in your masculine. So I think this is so important. We'll probably have to do a part two of this because I
let's do
think
it.
I'll
Yeah.
get some.
Well,
Yeah, we
have them
got
ask
now,
questions. Have them
huh?
ask questions, and we'll do
Yes,
part
and
two.
we'll answer like the specific scenarios and the fact
Yeah.
that you're living it. And I always tell people like I've been married for 14 years now, and there's not a day that I don't learn more about myself and about him, and just like the power of growth and
Mhm.
healing. None of us, especially as psychologists, we all have our wounds, which is probably why we're so good at this work, but we are constantly healing and
Mhm.
growing. And so relationships help us to do that. Now, I have some, do you want to say something? Because I have a segment that I call rapid fire
Okay,
questions.
just a quick thing would be this.
Uh-huh.
So, what I'm currently working on is collective narratives in which I have valued from my father. So, my
Mm,
father was born in 1925, so he comes from values from the early 1900s,
yes.
and that is where I'm learning how to receive better. To um, my father was all about taking care of others and not so much himself.
Yeah.
And
That
so
was my
those are certain
grandfather.
things that
Yes.
I'm learning to move through.
Hmm.
To also, I rarely will say, if like, there's been a lot of stress in different areas of my life, but I handle it well here because my father literally was in over 700 missions, over
Wow.
400 in battle, meaning with bullets and stuff. And
Yeah.
he lived. Okay. So I was raised by that man. So when people ask me if I'm stressed, I'll say no. What are you afraid of? I'll say nothing. But I'm dealing with cortisol levels that are kind of all over the place. So at night,
Yeah.
I must feel like there's still a war. I'm realizing,
Because your
oh,
body is like,
I got my parents. I'm healing generational trauma
yeah.
to be alert. And so
Yeah.
sometimes our healing is on a really much deeper level. And I'm
We've got
recognizing
to
that.
get into that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I had a mentor that said, like, you think it's you and your partner in the bedroom, metaphorically. It's you, your partner, their parents,
Yeah.
the grandparents, like everybody's in there because we're bringing all that stuff.
Yes.
All right. So I have some rapid fire questions for
Okay.
you. Just fun. Okay. One thing men wish women knew.
How afraid they really are of them.
Okay. Okay. Most underrated trait men adore in a woman.
When a woman doesn't have all the answers and
Yeah.
feels maybe even helpless in that moment.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Turn off that women don't realize is pushing men away.
Don't worry about it. I can handle it. When
Mm,
they try to take care of everything.
yeah. Yeah. Green flag women should look for early in dating or relationships.
When a man is present with you in your eyes, no matter what, and you can feel his heart by the way he looks at you.
Yeah. Yeah. And finally, what makes a woman unforgettable?
When she knows she's attractive just because.
Yes. Okay. Ladies, Rewind that last minute and those quick hot takes. I think you will get a lot from it. Dr. Ray, it has been so much fun. We are definitely going to do a part two. Tell the listeners how they can connect with you and your work.
My website's the best way, and that is RAYDOKTOR.com. I've had that website for 30 years, so it's not going
Ooh,
anywhere.
okay, yeah.
So go there, and I know that you'll have that in the notes. And I
Yes.
also have a book called All It Takes Is One,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll have a link to get that as well. And it's not just a book to read, there's exercises in there to actually examine those hidden beliefs that both men and women have that have been programmed from our collective culture. And so it has that. And of course, I have a lot of videos on YouTube, but navigating to my website, you'll
We'll
find
get you
access
to.
to everything.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much. I highly encourage everyone to go to Dr. Ray's website, check out his book, his resources, and we will have him back again. And of course, women, if you are looking for a community where you can be with other women, get insights, get live coaching from me to help you lean into your feminine, have healthy boundaries, and cultivate healthy, fulfilling relationships, make sure you check out my inner circle community, the Boundaries to Bliss Society. I will see you in the next episode. I'm Dr. Nicole.